Thursday became a critical day for mapping the weight of the health crisis on the American economy and consequently on the global economy. That is when the United States releases the weekly unemployment insurance claim data, information that's been measuring every 7 days the devastating effect of the disease spreading on the workforce of the richest country in the world. Throughout the past few weeks, more than 15 million Americans have applied for unemployment insurance, an absolute historic record. Even before the crisis, the number of orders had reached 600,000 in a week, but now this count easily exceeds millions. For this Thursday, the expectation is that the number of orders in unemployment benefits will exceed 20 million. It is a fact that adds up to a series of discouraging indicators. Yesterday, retailers announced a record drop in March sales, and industrial production had the biggest downfall since 1946. Economic forecasts aren't giving much room for optimism. According to Reuters, the American economy shrank 10.8% in the first quarter, the biggest decline since 1947. The IMF expects the American economy to decline by 5.9% in 2020, a much higher rate than the forecast of a fall in 3% to the world's financial growth. Chris Rupke, chief economist at MUFG in New York, says the economy has fallen into the abyss. Everywhere you look, Washington and state governments were not prepared for the rapid spread of the disease and the devastating damage that happened in the economy when businesses were closed and workers sent home. According to the Wall Street Journal, a second round of layoffs has started in the U.S. Since the lockdown has begun, its effects were alarming, and in a 3-week gap, 17 million workers became unemployed. At the first moment, the main victims of the lockdown effects were the most unprotected financially, such as retail employees and those who worked in places that needed to be shut down due to the disease spreading, such as malls, hotels, and restaurants. But many workers who thought their job positions would remain intact until the end of this crisis were caught on the wrong foot with a second wave of layoffs. On the report, lawyers, government, and even healthcare workers who aren't involved in fighting this crisis are now facing huge uncertainty about how long their jobs are still going to be safe, because it's only a matter of time until they're affected too. It was unanimous among 57 economists surveyed by the Journal that 14.4 million jobs are on the hook in the next months. Unemployment is expected to peak in June, with 13% of the population out of work, breaking the 50-year low of 3.5% that happened last February. So far, nearly 20 million Americans have reached for unemployment benefits in the past 3 weeks, exceeding any other period of mass layoffs recorded in history since World War II. The chief U.S. economist of Oxford Economics, the UK-based forecasting and consulting firm Gregory Dacko, foresees that 27.9 million jobs will be lost, and industries other than those ordered to stop their activities will account for 8 million to 10 million. That's a level of job destruction compared with the 2007 recession. The same firm projects April's jobs report, which will capture late March layoffs and will disclose cuts to 3.4 million business services workers, including lawyers, architects, consultants, and advertising professionals, as well as 1.5 million non-essential healthcare workers and 100,000 information workers, telecommunications and media workers included. The owner of ISG Software Group in Wallingford, Connecticut, Gary Corso, revealed that he has received only a few $100s in payments from customers, including manufacturers, nonprofits, and retailers, for which he hosts websites and builds applications. And that's definitely not enough just to pay the $3,000 electric bill for his servers and other equipment, let alone to pay his own salary. As he stated, and I quote, "Customers who paid like clockwork for 10+ years are suddenly late," he said. "I'm burning through all the cash I have." He's also filed for unemployment benefits. he is essentially volunteering in an effort to keep his business running. Even a ZipRecruiter labor economist, Julia Pollock, declared that the recruiting site itself laid off more than 400 of its 1,200 full-time employees at the end of March. A survey of visitors to this job search site announced that 39% of those employed in business and professional services declared they were laid off, a similar rate to respondents in retail and wholesale trade. A number of employees that were working from home are now facing widespread layoffs. In the group of the respondents who still had jobs, many in white-collar industries affirmed their hours were cut. According to Ms. Pollock, any company that had been planning to open a second location that hired an architect, an office designer, and contractor, they're not opening that location this year, and those people now won't have jobs. Any company planning to go public this year that hired accountants, consultants, PR professionals, they're laying off all those teams. Numerous law firms have had to reduce staff and cut pay as courts are largely closed, settlement discussions are on pause, and few new deals are being struck. Cadwalader, Wickersham and Taft LLP, and Baker Donaldson have all reduced compensation for associates and staff members. On the other hand, emergency services and intensive care wards have been overloaded in the past few weeks, while hospitals have been putting aside the elective surgical procedures and routine care that typically pay the bills in order to liberate resources. New England's Heart and Vascular Institute in Manchester cardiologist Daniel Philbin said that the revenue was sacrificed for a public health interest, and affirms that the hospital systems really are facing an incredible crunch because of this. The longer the curve gets pushed out, the more they face difficult decisions about employment. This really puts you in your place, says Emily Hill. I always felt untouchable, as she thought her job as a dental assistant was safe, working as a contractor at a dental clinic on Fort Hood in Texas, and she was in an in-demand field and employed through the military. But it turned out that mid-March, the military had given stop work orders to all non-essential contractors in order to limit any risk they might spread the disease. The report informs that state and local governments are not immune. They employ approximately 20 million. Unlike the federal government, they generally need to balance their books every year. As tax revenue falls, layoffs and other cost reductions are required. During the 2007-2009 recession, they just remained stable after the federal stimulus. But after the recession, until the second semester of 2013, 700,000 fell with some income and property tax revenues. They're once again asking for federal help to avoid cuts in services and payrolls. Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley says, "We've seen a massive drop in tax receipts and had to make some tough decisions. It's really emotional. No one wants to be deemed non-essential. Our employees want to help, but we need them to stay home." The mayor announced that 1,700 city workers have been let go. He completes saying that laying off workers to allow them to obtain increased unemployment benefits effectively transfers their wages to the federal government, and this dampens the city's budget as it pays the police and paramedics additional overtime and the retention and deployment of nurses who have done work in schools. The Wall Street Journal concludes by stating that the longer unemployment stays high, the greater the hardship will be as health insurance and unemployment benefits run out. The biggest question about the job perspective now is how long it will take for jobs to recover, which depends a lot on how long the disease control and social distancing measures will last. The consensus among economists surveyed by the Journal is that employment will return to the level it was in February 2020 in roughly 27 months, but the outlooks have varied widely. As maintained by economist Amy Cruz Cutts of AC Cutts & Associates LLC, it's expected that the labor market takes 5.5 years to fully recover. Even if the enormous scale of job cuts doesn't worsen so bad in the future, there is an extraordinary number of jobs to reverse and put back into the economy, she said. Colorado, Washington require large employers to specify whether layoffs are temporary or permanent, and this year 70% have been temporary. In the previous recession, less than 1% were. But we well know that in this moment we are all at a time that doesn't seem to be an ally anymore. Of course, this is only just the beginning of the end. All of the economic and financial bubbles are bursting. This is going to cause severe distress on the national, state, local, and community levels. All of the dominoes are going to be falling. We're going to see financial chaos like we've never seen before. We could have avoided this scenario if we had learned our lessons from the last financial crisis and had fundamentally rebuilt our financial system from the ground up using sound economic principles. And as long as this disease is still spreading somewhere, fear of the health crisis is going to cause a lot of people to greatly alter their normal economic patterns. So the truth is that we have a very long and very painful road ahead of us. And the months to come are going to make the last recession look like a Sunday picnic.